2023 has been a fantastic year for fans of video games, but it's been a very, very fantastic year for fans of RPGs. Whether you're into turn-based RPGs, whether you're into action RPGs, whether you're into CRPGs like Baldur's Gate 3, this has been a fantastic year for RPG fans. And in a year this filled up with amazing blockbuster games, it's easy to see why so many fantastic games go widely unnoticed. This demo that I played, Star Ocean, the Second Story R, is a remake of the Second Star Ocean game, and it is freaking phenomenal. It is a franchise that I've only heard of but never really dabbled in, never really played a game of. And when I saw this trailer back at the Nintendo Direct, I think during the summer, I was immediately taken back to a time where RPGs were not necessarily simple, but they had this level of charm that could only be captured by that era of gaming. When you think of like the Suikoden series, when you think of like those Final Fantasy games that came out during like the early PlayStation 1 era games, this like open world-ish type of turn-based RPG that really let your mind wander while also still keeping engaged with the story, never really losing a beat with the characters. And I really missed that. And throughout 2023, I've pretty much just been experimenting with a bunch of different games that I wouldn't normally have played, just because a lot of them had a lot of hype, a lot of them looked really interesting, and honestly, I feel like I'm at a place where I'm willing to try just about any game, and I'm willing to just give everything a shot. I'm willing to try things new just because I've always known what I liked. And again, now I'm just willing to kind of find out maybe I like other things that maybe I haven't really dabbled in. But Star Ocean Second Story R is essentially what I've loved from old school RPGs. Growing up playing things like the Suikoden series, playing things like those Final Fantasy 7, 8, 9, some of those Tales games that came out though during that era. Star Ocean, the Second Story R, takes me back to when I was just so much younger and loving this style of RPGs and spent so much time in these worlds. And what makes it better for me is I never played the original. So this is a completely new adventure for me with a new cast of characters, a new environment. And I guess I just want to take some time to talk about Star Ocean, the Second Story R. So in case you guys didn't know or haven't heard, there's a demo available on Nintendo Switch and also on the PlayStation consoles for the Second Story R. And it allows you to play up to 3 hours of the game. You can only level up to like level 12, and it's very limited to what you can do. But essentially, it's the beginning parts of Star Ocean, the Second Story R. Your demo does transfer over to the main game. So you're essentially just allowed to play 3 hours of like the main game, and then if you like the game, you purchase it and you continue where you left off. And I really like when demos do this, and Square Enix is like becoming really famous for doing this and allowing this to happen. And again, I love it because it lets me just experience how I would feel the game walking into it without really just being like thrown into a middle section of the game and not really understanding what's going on. So it gives me a good grasp of like the early stages of the game. Alright, so let's start talking about the actual game, Star Ocean, the Second Story R. So if you guys are unfamiliar with the Star Ocean franchise, this is an action RPG. This is the second game in this like long line of franchise. I personally never played any of these, but usually how they work out from what I've gathered is they're usually like very interstellar, like planetary RPGs where you travel across planets or like crash land on a specific planet or whatever. And Star Ocean, the Second Story R is essentially that as well. You play as either the main protagonist, Claude, or the main protagonist, Rena. It kind of depends. I chose Claude. I don't know what happens if you chose Rena, if you kind of start off the story differently. But if you choose Claude, the beginning starts off on planet Earth. You're essentially a part of like a military force where your dad is the general. You kind of overstep your boundaries. You investigate a little further on some situation that you're not supposed to, and you end up getting transported to a faraway planet. So very like isekai like vibes, but also kind of like Star Trek-y, where you start the game in one world that's like kind of post-apocalyptic, and it feels very like down and defeated. And then you travel to this other planet that feels more like what you come to expect from like an RPG of like this era, where everything feels very like not medieval but like folky and like not really as developed. Cloud also mentions how the air feels more pure. It doesn't feel like dirty. Again, it's just really interesting, this dynamic, and it's not something that I really hear in RPGs, where at least of this era, where they mention like Earth at all. Usually have like a different name for the planet, like Gaia or Terra or something. They don't really talk about Earth too much. So seeing that Cloud comes from Earth is definitely an interesting like way to start off the game. It definitely adds a little bit of like sci-fi to this very like, I guess more like medieval type of game. Medieval's not the right word, but you know what I'm talking about. Like those that are like what you would expect an RPG of that era to really take place in, or that more like undeveloped style of world that you normally expect with like farms and like a lot of grassland and villages and stuff like that. So it's a really interesting way of making sci-fi intertwined with like fantasy, and I really really like it. It's something again that I don't see often. Again, I've never played a Star Ocean game before, so this is all new to me. And again, I'm absolutely loving like the change of scenery, the change of events. The art style in this game is freaking phenomenal. It does this weird thing where the backgrounds and environments are like 3D rendered, and then the characters are like HD 2D pixelated. So you feel like you're playing like a 2D game with like 3D environments. It feels very very interesting. It looks really really cool, and everything is very very eye-catching. You have like the big, not big, but you have like an open world in between like villages that harkens back to like a Final Fantasy 7, Final Fantasy 8. Tales of Vesperia was like coming to my mind a lot when I was traveling from village to village. You get to see all the enemies actually on the map, which is really really cool. Something that I noticed that this game does really really well is it has a lot of like quality of life like features added on, where like you can see the environments. It has auto saves. It has a lot of things that weren't really, I'm assuming, there back on like the original game, just because this is something you see a lot more often now with like the option to auto equip. You auto equip equipment that you find in treasure chests. You like see enemies, you can like back attack them, stuff like that. Auto saves, quick travel or fast travel. A lot of like, again, quality of life stuff that really really like streamlines this experience. The one thing that I would say is kind of a mark against it is the fact that there's never really like a question of where to go, what to do. It's very 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 like streamlined to the point where it'll like highlight on the map and even like show you like glimmers of what you're supposed to be looking for, in a way that's saying like this is where you want to go if you want to continue the story. And you'll get to a place that'll be like, hey, there's a bunch of branching paths, and it's obvious that if you go through those branching paths you're gonna get treasure, so you might as well do those. But it doesn't feel like you get to an area and you're like, oh my god, where do I go? And you kind of like just start traveling wherever. Like there's not a lot of exploration naturally. Like you definitely know when you're exploring and when you're going on the main quest. So again, I don't know how that's gonna like carry on throughout the game, if it becomes a hindrance or if it becomes like a lifesaver, but it definitely takes away a little bit of the exploration of this game, but not enough to the point where it like detracts from the experience. Alright, so this is an action RPG, so I would be remiss if I didn't talk about the combat of this game. This is an action RPG in the same way like the Tales of series is, where you see an enemy like on the map, you engage in combat with them, and then you end up in like a battle arena where like you guys are all closed into like this battle, and then you like you attack, you can block, you can parry, stuff like that. It doesn't have like the depth that you would expect from like a modern day action RPG, like if you think of like the Souls games or like a Final Fantasy 16 or something like that. It's not that level of action RPG. It's definitely RPG first, and action is just kind of like the way to get across your specific actions versus like a menu select screen. So again, at least early on, it is very very simple. It is very very satisfying though. I like really blocking them and then being able to punish them for that. stuff like that that really made this combat a little addictive. And every time I saw an enemy on the field, I really wanted to fight them because, again, it was fun for me to fight them. I didn't do a lot of fast traveling because, again, I wanted to go out and experience the combat a little bit more. And that maybe made me a little bit more higher level than the enemies, because every time I ran across an enemy or a boss fight, I was just like destroying them without any risk, any fear of that I might lose my life, any of that stuff. Again, this could just be very early on stuff. Obviously, like as you add party members, as you add like more elements and things that are gonna affect the gameplay, I'm sure it's definitely gonna like apply to the more of the in-depth stuff. Is definitely gonna become more of like managing my health bars, managing everybody's actions, similar to like the Tales of series, where you can choose like what you want to focus on, whether you want to just let people do what they want to do, focus on offensive, focus on defensive, etc. I wouldn't say it's as in-depth as a lot of Tales of games, but it's definitely, again, for me, that's the closest thing I could really like hold it to. But yeah, overall, my time with the demo was fantastic. I absolutely love this game for everything that it's doing to modernize what I'm assuming is a very classic game for Star Ocean fans. And me being new to this franchise, I kind of want to see what more this franchise has to offer after I complete Second Story R, of course. But yeah, definitely a game I'm looking forward to. If you guys are interested, definitely check it out. Check out the demo. See if it's a game for you guys. I highly recommend this one. Anyways, you guys, I'm gonna end this video here. Like the video if you guys like the video. Please consider subscribing. That does help me out tons. And let me know your thoughts on the game or the demo or anything like that. I'll see you guys on the next video.